Okay, let's see. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Black Ivy Media's panel discussion entitled Black Fatherhood, the Next Generation. My name is Rita Pierre, and I am the founder and CEO of Black Ivy Media, and I will also be your moderator for this evening's discussion. So we want to again thank you all who are tuning in on Facebook and on YouTube. This is a very important discussion, and we thought that it would be best to have it in the month of June, as June is the month we celebrate Father's Day, and it is the month where we also highlight men's health. So we have an amazing panel of Black fathers who's going to help me tonight facilitate this discussion on Black fatherhood and what it means for the next generation. And so before we bring up our esteemed panel of Black fathers, I just want to let you guys know, those of you who are tuning in live tonight, the comment section is there for you to put in your comments, to ask whatever questions you may have. For those of you who are going to be tuning in to this live after the fact, if you have any questions, if you have any comments, feel free to add those questions and comments on our social media platforms. And if you want to send an email, you can do so at info@blackivymedia.com. For those of you who are not familiar with Black Ivy Media, we are a platform that seeks to change the narrative of the Black diaspora through various forms of digital media. Our mission is really to challenge people to think more critically and to think beyond their perspective. And so we do this by many ways, but our most popular way is through conversation, hence our panel discussion. And so the media, as many of you know, has done an amazing job, I would say, of really perpetuating this negative narrative of Black men and Black fathers. In fact, the media has depicted many stereotypes, many stigmas that Black fathers do not exist. And so tonight we really want to shine a positive light on Black fathers and Black fatherhood and really engage in some meaningful discussion as to what fatherhood is, what Black fatherhood is, and what does that mean moving forward? Why is Black fatherhood important? important? Why is fatherhood important in general? And so there are many questions that people are asking with respect to this. If you guys are on social media, there's always discussions with respect to Black men and Black fathers. And so we really want to get to the bottom of some of these stereotypes, some of these stigmas, and really highlight the positive aspects of Black fatherhood in hopes to encourage those of you who are tuning in to really, again, challenge the narrative and to really see things in a different light. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up my esteemed panelists. We have here Carl Pierre, William Francisque, and Patrick Michelle.
Hello.
Okay. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
So I just want to thank you all for just taking the time tonight to have this very important conversation. It's a Wednesday night. This, outside feels good.
Sure does.
So I thank you because these conversations are really important to have. And, there's so many things people are engaging on social media. And sometimes these important conversations are not really up on the priority list. But I really commend you guys for just taking the time to be vulnerable, to share your stories, and to really move the needle forward in terms of the culture. So I want to just go around and have you all introduce yourselves. Let us know a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and what you do. And we can start with you, Carl.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Carl Pierre, originally hailing from Brooklyn, New York. Currently now residing in Charlotte, North Carolina area. I am a husband, father of three, one boy, two girls. And it's just been a journey, just been trying to navigate being the best dad that I can be and just learning the type of father that I wanted to be. And honestly, just this time has been, it has its ups, it has its downs, but it's just been fun for the most part, and I enjoy every minute of it.
All right. Patrick? Patrick?
Yes. How you doing? Well, I'm Patrick Michelle. I am from Long Island, New York, Freeport. I have one daughter. Uh, she is 9 years old, about to be 20. uh, I am a union construction worker. That's what I do for work. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you for being with us, Patrick. And last but not least, William.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is William Francis. I also live in Long Island, New York. I'm married. I have a son who is going to be 17 on the 4th of July. And I'm employed with Verizon Communications as an engineer. And fatherhood for me has been great. It has its ups and downs, as Paul said. Um, but one of the best jobs in the world is being a parent. So I thank you for inviting me to this panel, and I'm here to learn a lot, and from my other two panelists. So I thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you. And so we want to make sure that we get through the questions. I know you guys are like, oh, this is so many questions, but there's so much ground to really cover when it comes to this topic. And so I just want to kind of start off by asking some general questions of each of you. And so the first one's going to be, did you grow up with a father present in your home? And if not, did you have a father figure that you could rely on? And so we can go Carl, Patrick, and William.
Yes. So I did grow up with my father being in the home. My dad was there, taking us to school, to church. The Haitian, the Caribbean thing, for us is Liko Legali's Lakai, school, church, and home. So very much so, he was just there, and it was he was one of the influences and one of the areas that I pulled from. Was like, all right, if I'm gonna be a dad, who do I want to emulate? Who do I want to be like? And I was trying to follow after his footsteps because that was, he was there to be able to lay that groundwork for me.
Great, Patrick.
All right. I did have my father growing up. He wasn't in the household. He did live in another house, but I did see him, I want to say, at least 3 times a week. So he was very much involved in my life, especially with the discipline. So he was there. He was there. But uh, the only thing I would say is he wasn't there in the way that I would say I needed him to be, but at the same time he was there. So I cannot say that he was just absent.
Mhm.
Okay. Just like Carl and just like Patrick, I had a father. I'm of Haitian descent as well. And that speaks a lot about West Indian value system. My dad was very much present in my life. He had 8 children with my mom, and I fall in number 7, so closer to the tail end. The one thing, like Patrick, there was one thing that I needed being in America, right? You need your dad there, maybe to help you navigate through the system that we have in America, right? So, but despite that, like what I mean by that, maybe tossing a football with me, or maybe showing me how to play baseball, the American stuff, right? Um, and just like Carl said, in the Haitian household, what do we always hear? Doctor, lawyer, engineer. But they don't show you how to get to those steps. They just tell you what to do. So what I've done, and my dad was one of my heroes, unfortunately before he passed. But what I've done was take the good that he's done and showed me, and it's tweaked it, which has made me a better father because I was the coach. I was, the tutorer. Um, and I'm pretty sure just like Carl and Patrick. So we took the things that our Haitian fathers did not do and we applied it probably to our lives. I know I did.
I see. I see. And so, with that, with all of you having your fathers in your life, what would you say is the greatest lesson you learned from your father? It can be a negative lesson, it could be a positive lesson, but what's the biggest lesson that you've learned?
Um, I would say biggest lesson that I got from my dad was to be authentically me. Like, the two things I always remember he would say was, to be a leader, not a follower, and to do you. Like, you're Carl, you're the boss. You do what you want to do. You make it work. You make it happen. And if it's gonna fit within whatever constructs, norms in society, however it works, you make it work. But whatever you do, just be you. Like, there's no other Carl. No matter how many times anybody else wants to try and be Carl, there won't be another Carl. So just enjoy that fact and be there and be that guy. If you're gonna be the big guy in the room, be the big guy in the room. If you're gonna be the quiet guy in the back that's orchestrating, be the quiet guy in the back orchestrating. As long as it's me and that's what I want to do, he's just like, go ahead, go for it.
One of the most memorable thing. Okay, I would have to say it would be to just be present in my daughter's life because I mean, granted, my dad was there, but like our partner said, he wasn't. He just was there. He wasn't uh, given me the tools that I needed as a man, to walk in this world. And I feel like just being there and just actually going through the steps with your kid, it's very important because you being there going through the steps, it's so much of a help, and it makes such a in them growing up with them just watching you and you just actually being active in their life. So, if one thing that I did learn is to actually be there in every way possible for my daughter. So that's one thing that stuck with me with him. I'll have to say.
I concur with Patrick. I learned a lot through osmosis with my dad. So he was always present in the home. He always went to work. Um, and he showed me the greatest lesson I learned was to take care of the family and to provide an excellent education. There's one thing that no one can take away from me, was a great education. So I gave that to my son. And also, I remember vividly one day, he had a dispute with my mom. And as we're walking down the Brooklyn street where we grew up, he was like, and it was so weird because he was upset with her. He was like, marry a woman like your mother. And I couldn't understand it at this young age. And as I got older, I married a woman like my mom. And what that meant was a strong woman, a woman that's going to take care of the family, a woman that's career driven and loyal. So I got those two lessons: being a great provider and also choosing wisely and giving a great education to my son.
Okay. Now, at what age did you all become fathers?
26.
24.
34 years old.
Okay. And now with that, were you, at the time you had your first child, were you guys married, single, engaged?
The first, I was married.
I was dating.
I was married.
Okay. And so when you guys first found out that you were going to be fathers, how did you feel? What were the emotions that went through your minds? Because a lot of times when we're, watching TV and we're looking at the media, especially when they're again fixated on Black men, it's always like, oh man, leave this, like, oh, I'm not ready. It's always this negativity. So I with respect to you guys, like, how was your experience?
So when I first found out, I was nervous. I was working a dead end job, making like $14 an hour, and it was like, oh my gosh, we're gonna have a baby. I need a raise. And it was just like, what am I gonna do? And it's like, how do I raise a baby? How do I take care of this kid? How do I change diapers? It was just a flood of questions, everything come in, and that was just it was just like state of disbelief at that point too. It was like, wait, me? I was like, oh snap, I'm me. And I was like, oh, okay. But after a while, my wife and I, we just sat each other down. We cried for like 2 seconds. But then we just got through. We're like, hey, this is us. Let's get it. This is our new phase. This is one of our many firsts that we're gonna have in life. So you know what? This is our first child. Let's get it. Let's enjoy the moment. Let's enjoy the ride. And that's why I just made light and enjoyed every step of the way. So every doctor's visit, sonogram, everything, whatever it was just like just enjoy all of it. Just enjoy the ride. No matter how nervous I was, I made sure I didn't show it, at least to her. Made sure I didn't show it, and just be present and enjoy the moment.
Well, for me, it was completely different. I was terrified. I was terrified. I was 24. I didn't know what I was really doing with my life at the time. Bringing a new, a kid into the world. I just was not really prepared for it. But as time went on, I did get into that, all right, I got to get my stuff together, and it went from fear to excitement. So I'm not gonna lie, like, and I thought to myself, with everything that I know, and all the wisdom that I've gained from my 24 years living, I want to extend that, and I want to just be the best I can be for my daughter and to my daughter. So I just took that and like ran with it, and just made it the happiest thing that happened to me instead of the saddest thing. So it did go from fear, but it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing. And especially for the guys to have daughters, you guys should know what I'm talking about. It's just it's a different bond. So yeah, I would it was amazing. It's amazing.
Okay.
Yeah. When I found out, I was excited. Again, I came from a family of 8 children, and I, I'm we're big on family. So when I found out, I was excited, and I couldn't wait to be a dad.
Okay. I like that because again, we don't really see that portrayed in media. We see a lot of the I can't believe this is happening to me. We see like the despair and we don't see the joy. Particularly in I would say in your case, Patrick, where you weren't married or engaged with the
No.
mother. And so it's a lot of times you kind of see it's like I can't believe I got trapped, this happened to me. You see all this negativity around it, but not the positivity.
That sounded just like me, and not taking any accountability, just like out there. But again, I woosah and got my things together, got my thoughts together, and turned it into a beautiful thing. So you know.
So now I want to talk a little bit about the stereotypes and the stigmas that surround Black men and Black fatherhood, right? We've mentioned already so many times that the media perpetuates this narrative that Black fathers do not exist, that Black fathers are deadbeats, and that Black fathers don't take care of their children. And so I kind of want to get your take on it, because I don't know what the statistics are, because they're always throwing statistics everywhere, right? But I think it is something that we can acknowledge that many of either our friends, our family members, did not grow up with fathers in the home and may not have even had father figures, right? So even though the narrative is showing that Black men, are like fatherhood just doesn't exist, period. I don't think we can ignore the fact that there still is, a good amount of children who were raised without fathers, period, in their household. Like for me personally, I did not have a father in my house, but I was lucky enough to have uncles that stepped in and were disciplinarians and were, pastors in the church that kind of was like, we're going to take care of these kids in the community. We're not going to let them go astray. But what are your thoughts about these stereotypes when people, are quick to just say, well, Black men, Black fathers don't exist. They're not around. They don't take care of their kids. What are your thoughts on these stereotypes? And anyone can answer that.
I'll go. I don't know why that stigma and why that's even in a conversation. Every man that I know, every Black man that I know, no matter what their nationality is, has been a good father. Every single man. Now, maybe I'm an anomaly as far as having those experiences. I think even the ones that were not in the household were good fathers. Mm-hmm. So I've never believed that. I've never believed that to be true. I've argued it with my Caucasian counterparts, Asian counterparts, and Indian counterparts, and I'm like, listen, that's a false narrative. So I don't believe it to be true. Now I understand why there's some fathers that have that stigma, right, or that title, but and that's a whole nother podcast. That's a whole nother discussion about how the Black families were, broken up and separated from their spouses, and broke up the Black household. But I've never seen it, and that's my answer in short. I don't believe that to be true.
Okay, Patrick, I know you wanted to say something.
Yes, no, I agree. For the most part, I don't see that. Well, as far as the people that I know a lot of people that are well off, that are in good stance as far as financially, and they're there. And I also know people that are not so well off, and not for nothing, the parents are there as well. Are they doing the best they can? Yes. But they're there nevertheless. So I don't see a lot of where with my upbringing and people that I know, that everybody takes care of theirs for the most part, and it's a good thing because it doesn't happen often, but at the same time, luckily, my contingencies they're all taken care of. So I'm appreciative of that.
And I don't know, Crossy, you were shaking your head. You're like, yeah,
Yeah,
kind of agree
yeah.
with everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I just agreed with everything because even like growing up, like I told my friends, I didn't know about single parent households and dads not being present up until I got to high school. Because even like growing up, I always saw like someone had, even times I thought it was their dad, but it wasn't, but they had a father figure in their life. So it
Mhm.
always was, there was always a representation there, and it just never really clicked for me, and I didn't know it until I got to high school, and I made new friends, and then I found out like yes, they're in single parent households. Like no, I've never met my dad. No, I don't know who my dad is, and I was like, that's a whole new world to me now. It just opened everything up. But like I said, growing up, all I knew was two parent household, or there's a father figure in your life to the point where you don't even know that dad's not there because there's that father figure that stepped up and just helped play that role.
Right. I think that's really interesting because, again, I've always lived this weird duality growing up in the church. Carl and I grew up in the church together. And so even if you didn't have a dad at home, there was definitely a surrogate father around. So you didn't necessarily feel that like void. Like Carl's father has been like a dad to me in the church. Like I can say he calls me his daughter all the time.
Yeah.
So I can't say that I felt like, oh man, I missed out. But it's interesting to hear, this because if you were to ask somebody else, they could say, well, all my friends have single parent households. Like this is normal. So you guys are the ones who are not normal.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So along the same lines of that question, so the stereotype, and I agree to part of the reasons I think that stereotypes exist is that we continue to talk about them and perpetuate them without really getting to an understanding. I think sometimes you do have to talk about them, but to get to an understanding that it's a false narrative. If you really take a close look, maybe your dad wasn't in your house, but somebody was serving as some sort of figure. But I think that one of the ways these stereotypes and these stigmas tend to continue is by allowing, others to bring them up and to talk about them and to kind of make them the reality rather. But I wanted to kind of get into this question about so there are children that are raised, in single parent households, right? Like myself, right? But do you believe that children can be raised successfully without a father? Because there are a lot of women who, for whatever reason, have to play, and I don't want to say both roles, because I think it's unfair to say in both roles, but have to then really raise the child on their own, and there is no father or father figure. And many wonder whether or not a child can be raised, I guess, what quote unquote properly, or can be raised successfully without the presence of a father in their lives. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I would say to an extent that yes, it can happen, um, but again, there's like you said with playing both roles. There's the role of the father is played by the father. Like there's certain things that dad can teach his son, dad can teach his daughter that mom can't teach because it's different experiences that men and women go through. Um, and I think it can be successful if there are, say, father figures that step in, whether early on, later on in life, and also to just from learning life experiences, from just going out, like let's say, to college, going away to college, you'll learn, certain life skills that you'll pick up, and you'll interact and meet people that can give you little tidbits that can help foster this person and shape them to become the successful person that they are. So it can be a success. You can have a successful individual without having a father present in their life. I don't want to say that it's 100% works or 100% doesn't work, but it does take having some influence. There's going to be some sort of a father figure that steps in somehow, some way to help make it a fully successful story.
I like that.
Yep. Yep.
Okay. And so then I want to kind of get into what makes a good father, right? We talk about, oh, he's a good father, he's not a good father, this is a good father, this is not a good father. What is there a formula to what makes a good father? Is it some, and I want to break it down a little more where in some of our households, and I would say just me being Haitian American, I've seen this from my cousins and some of my friends where the father is present, but only financially, right? Like they are the breadwinner, they are the financial everything, but they're not emotionally there. They're not coming to, games. They're not showing up at school events. They're just there financially. Some would say, well, he's providing. That's a good father. Whereas somebody else would say, well, he's not a good father because he doesn't show up for the children emotionally. So I kind of want to get from each of you, what do you consider a good father to be? What are the ingredients to a good father, if that's even a thing?
I like the way you said, what's the formula? I believe that there is a formula. Nurturing, loving, attentive, patient. Oh, patience is the biggest thing. I'm not blessed with having a daughter, but raising a boy, it's tough. As great as he is, you have to have patience, and I'm pretty sure the same thing will apply to young girls as well. So some of these things are part of that formula.
Mhm.
What makes a good father, and to be loving. Um, and I think that comes from my roots in the church as well. You know, God loved us, Jesus loved us with all our flaws, right? So you have to take that, but it's hard. I'm not trying to sell you a bag of dreams here. It's very difficult because at the end of the day, we're human and we have human
Right.
emotions. We also, as fathers, get sad. So when you misstep, you're like, come on, man, why'd you do that? And it hurts you because you're like, I taught you better than that. So what makes a good father is all these components put together, stir it up in a pot, and then try to execute it well.
I like
I
that.
agree. I definitely agree. I would definitely agree with that. It's a lot of different formulas. It's a lot of different components. Being there, loving. I would also have to throw in there being vulnerable. That's one thing that I know a lot of Haitian fathers you would never see ever, ever, ever. Them being vulnerable and like brother
Yeah.
said, showing love and that emotion. If they were to just do those things, they would be like 100%. But it's those small things that really matter. So I would also throw in being vulnerable and also learning as well. I'm a big advocate of always learning. So as being a great father, I think you learn as you go as well. You learn with your kid. Patience, a huge thing, a huge thing. Um, and yeah, it's that big concoction.
Okay. And so I want to talk about some of the challenges that Black fathers face, right? And maybe they're not different from our counterparts. Maybe they are, but I kind of want to get your opinion on like what are some of the challenges specifically, I would say akin to Black fathers, or are there any challenges that are only faced or primarily faced by Black fathers?
May I take this one?
Yes, sir.
PTSD. We have PTSD as Black men in America. When I raise my son, I'm I'm like, listen, be careful riding your bike, no matter where we live. And he's been blessed to have a great life and in a great neighborhood. And I worry about him constantly hanging with his friends and being the only person. So, what are the challenges raising a Black child in America? It seems like we went backwards a little bit, um, as a not as a people, but as a society. The racism is real. and I'm scared for him. So what are my challenges? And I think this will go into your next question. What mistakes have I made? Because the question you have before, because I have PTSD as a Black man, what I did wrong was put my fears on him. Put my fears on him. And but we've spoken about it. And you just want the best for your kid, but sometimes you don't know how to articulate to these teenagers, like, hey, listen, it's really not this way. Well, how do you know my friends are that way? Well, I don't know they're that way, but I know their parents are probably my age and older, and they probably thought this way. I said, so, and so I don't want to go too long about it. I think I answered it, but I'll let Carl and Pat, take it from here.
Yeah, that is definitely one of, if not the biggest challenge, especially as a Black father, is dealing with that PTSD and just uh, the way that it cripples the freedom that you want to have to be a dad. Like, I remember growing up, we were outside, we would just, we go to the park, we go to the store, we could just be out there by ourselves, but you just knew when to come back home. But it's like now I'm worried if my son goes out. Like if my son goes out to get a pack of Skittles and in Arizona, is he gonna come back home? If my son looks a certain way, will he be stopped? And it's like uh, it it makes it tough because you want to embrace individuality. Like if my son wants to have braids in his hair, he wants to wear his hoodie, he wants to have tattoos, he wants to wear a chain, whatever it is he going to be stopped just because of that appearance? But if he is just wearing a white tee, a white collared shirt, and just walking down the street, he still stands a chance of being stopped for just because of the color of his skin. And so it's like, there's no real, hey, go outside, look like this, and you'll be fine. And that trauma, just having that PTSD, it just makes it real tough because, you want to tell them, hey, get back home safely. And, just to hear that, they're back home is like the biggest sigh of relief that you can get. And like, all right, it's another night.
Yeah, that's I would definitely have to agree. One of one of the things I've been having difficulties with is as far as I was fortunate when my daughter was very young to she went to a a good school, you could say. And she was there. It wasn't a lot of kids, that looked like her. So growing up, I remember I had to have the conversation with her, to let her know who she is, like her identity. And it kind of was like a weird conversation to have because I'm new to this. Like I'm not sure how to really explain it to her and articulate it. I did the best I can, but for a second she didn't know who she identified as because I remember asking her, and because she was always around a certain group, she would identify as the other group. And the PSD kicked in, and I'm like, oh man, I really have to really explain this to her because this world is not as sweet as she's looking at it as, and it's just difficult. But it's very important to have them understand, who they are and who they are in this world, and what they have to look out for, because it is real. It really is real.
Right. I definitely hear what you guys are saying because although I am not a Black man, I am raising a Black man. He's 15 years old and he's in these, he wants to be in these streets. He's 15 years old. He wants to say, hey, and when I mean in these streets, like he just wants to go to the park. He just wants to go to the corner store. Like that's what I have to call in these streets now, because anytime you leave the house, you are essentially in the street. And so it is, very challenging sometimes because you want to be able to balance giving the child some sort of freedom to explore, like you said, who they are. Like my son had gotten dreads. And I mean, the Haitian in me, growing up in the church was kind of like, oh, what's happening here? What's going on? But the other part was more so because I know how society and the streets and law enforcement view kids who have, gold tip dreads with a fake chain on, it's not welcoming. And so I totally, understand. I think coming from the Black man's perspective even more, having to kind of also just go through these stops, go through these checks, and then now, and not being able to fully grasp it yourself, and then imagining, wow, my 17-year-old, my 15-year-old has to endure this as well, and they might not be equipped with the emotional intelligence to kind of deal with this. So I understand where the concern is with that. And so I kind of want to skip around a little bit with some of the questions, and really talk about this next generation, and how important like Black fatherhood is, for this next generation, the importance of it, because we do hear this narrative that, well, it's, we could, we don't need the Black fathers. Like, it's not that important. Like, as long as the child is being raised by a parent, whether it's the mom, whether it's the grandma, it's whatever, like, it's not that serious, right? Like, Black fatherhood, it's nice if I can, if we can get them involved, but if they're not, it's okay. But I feel like, and this is, me, and you guys could let me know if it's your thoughts too, with the way that this world is going and the way that things are happening, I think it's so critical for, one, the Black family to be intact, and two, for fatherhood to really be, I wouldn't say at the forefront maybe, but to be really highlighted, and to really, for a focus to really be put on that. And so when we're thinking about the next generation, how how do you see like fatherhood, Black fatherhood, playing into rearing this next generation? Because they're not the same. These kids are not the same as the way we were when we were growing up, and the times are not the same. And so what we could have gotten away with when we were growing up, whether we had fathers around or not, I don't think that these kids, we can get away with it with these kids. So any thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm.
So just for clarity, how do we parent with this generation and going and further?
I think that, yeah, when we're talking specifically about like, Black fatherhood and Black fathers, right? Because again, whether we agree with it or not, there is this narrative, there is this stigma out there when it comes to the the presence of Black fathers, and their role really in the lives of children, in the lives of the next generation. So I kind of want to get from your perspective as Black fathers, what does parenting look like? Because I think it was you, William, maybe I could be wrong, but we were talking about how our fathers, how your father had raised you, and some of the ingredients like love and compassion and whatnot. And so how more important is the presence of the Black man in these children's lives, moving forward?
I think that it's incredibly important, because I'm not going to get into this topic really, but media, entertainment are teaching our kids. I'm trying to be PC here. Are teaching our kids in a way that probably, from what it sounds like, Patrick and Carl, do not align with our belief system. So, being a parent and how important is it going forward? I think that being present and having even uncomfortable conversations for yourself, and even educating ourselves as Black men in the newest trends, like a TikTok, or like a Twitter. I mean, even though Twitter is part of our generation, but like a TikTok or whatever new social media platform there is, and even watching these shows and having discussions with them about these shows. Because again, without teaching our children about knowledge of self, they can really, I believe that they can really miss the mark and be influenced in a negative way. And that way does not jive with me. I'm being real politically correct here. It doesn't align with my belief system. Um, yeah.
Absolutely. And we also, I would add to Mr. Williams, there is so much going on with social media and access to information. I feel that with all this access to information, it's a great but scary thing. And we have to be there to monitor and to, like Mr. Williams said, like advise and walk through and educate our kids on all this information, because what happens is if they're around the wrong people, they can take the information and it can be something not good. So I feel like it's very, very, very important to be there to give that guidance, so that way and to monitor what's going on, so that way we can assess the situation, that we can not let anything happen bad in the future. So I definitely agree with Mr. William.
Yeah, and it's it's with the advancement of technology in this day and age, especially with the access to, like you said, Patrick, all the access to information that's out there. I remember there was a YouTube channel, this one guy where he would teach young guys how to tie a tie. He's like, my dad wasn't here to show me how to tie a tie, so I'm gonna do it for you guys who don't have your dad's present. I'm gonna show you how to tie a tie. So it's with the advancement of technology and media, it is perpetuating and pushing that narrative where, okay, it's all right if dad's not around because here's the different resources we're going to give you, and it's it's a double-edged sword. It can be good, but it's also bad because it is trying to push that out. But then on the other side, like I do see like on social media where we're trying to get a hold of control and change the narrative now, where you'll have the dope black dads movement. There's the 100 dad, what is it, the 100 dad march that they'll have. It's happened in Brooklyn a couple of times where it's like 100 black dads are out there. They're in their strollers. They're pushing their strollers, having their kids out, and just showing the world like, no, we're here. Dads are here, and this is what we're doing. We're present in our kids' lives. So it's I think we just gotta just take back the narrative, take control of it, change it, and just get it to align more where it's like, okay, dad is present, because even if you think like the whole stereotypical things where they would say what dad taught you. So dad would teach you how to change your oil, change your tire, tie a tie, these things like that. Yes, now you can find it online, but it's the bonding moment where you're learning from dad how to do these things. So like for me, I had the two people I said that was gonna help me to shape me be the dad that I am was my dad and he's Cliff Huxtable. I grew up on the Cosby's. I loved it, and I was just like, I'm gonna be that funny, annoying dad, but I'm gonna give you teaching moments and everything like that. And it's like, um, my dad had sparingly little funny moments here and there, but there was always a teaching moment. So it was like, all right, that's what I'm gonna take, and we're gonna make that happen. So, however, I use that now to just make sure that okay, hey, I'm gonna raise these kids this way. This is how it's gonna happen, and I'm loud with it. Like everybody's gonna see when I'm raising the kids. I'm letting them know, and if this kid's around, I drag them in too. I'm like, we're all learning this lesson. So it's just like let's be present and just that to everybody.
Right. I will say that Carl, when my son was growing up in the church, Carl had definitely yanked him up a little bit to be like, "Hey, what's going on?" And my son's father's present in his life, but Carl was in the church, like, "Hey, what's happening here? What's going on?" And so I love what you said, Carl, about really taking back the narrative. And I don't think I knew about this 100 Dad March thing, but I feel like those are some of the many ways that we can really, again, highlight that this black dad thing, this black father thing is not like, this is not a myth. It's not like the Loch Ness monster.
Right.
It's here. And black dads are real. And I can say that, I'm 38. And a lot of my friends who do have children, like they're present, whether they're with the mother or they're not, I don't have one deadbeat in my circle, period. And so I think that at least it seems like our generation, maybe keeping this thing, I don't know, to heart, where it's like, let's be present.
Yeah.
So
Trying to keep that in the picture.
Right. Let's keep that. Let's keep that a thing. And so I know that we're winding down here, but I do have just a couple more questions, and these were kind of like fan favorites, so I wanted to make sure that I get them out. Before we get to some of the wrap up questions, this one came into my DM several times, so I am going to have to ask it about the Nick Cannon question. I know that some of you guys are like, oh man, I don't want to have to indulge in this, social media crisis. But unfortunately, as much as we try to stay away from mainstream stuff, the mainstream tends to find its way into our living rooms and into our group chats when these situations take place. And unfortunately, Nick Cannon's been around doing his thing for too long, where it's like we can't stop talking about him. So the question here is, I really want to kind of get your thoughts on what's going on with Nick Cannon. So for those of you who are tuning in, because there are people who do live under a rock and are like, I have no idea who Nick Cannon is, but celebrity, grew up on Nickelodeon, and essentially Mariah Carey's, I guess, ex-husband or whatever the case is. But the reason that we're talking about him in this context is that I think right now he's on his 8th child, and I think they're definitely by at least 5, 6 different women. I recently saw an interview where he said that there are 3 more in the chamber. There's 3 more come fall 2022. There's at least, and he actually said at least 3. So we don't know how many more. And so when we're thinking about fatherhood, Black families, strengthening the Black families, creating, keeping the narrative of 2-parent households for our children. Children are growing up in homes, seeing both of their parents interacting, living life. What are your thoughts on that? Because many have said that Nick is literally going around creating broken homes on purpose. Mm-hmm. It didn't happen on accident, because we know things happen, but purposely creating multiple families where he cannot wake up every morning in each household. They all don't live in the same house. It's one thing if he was doing the Mormon thing, the polygamy thing, and they all were growing, but that's not what's happening. And so as Black men, Black fathers living in this society, watching Nick Cannon essentially, I would say, make a mockery of Black fatherhood and Black families. Like, what are your thoughts on
that? I'm disgusted when I hear this story. You're creating this story that you're continuing this cycle, how other people in the world are thinking how Black fathers are. Oh, you just want to spread your seed around. You don't, no matter how much money he has, you can't be present. You're not omnipresent, right? You can't be in all these homes. Some of those kids are probably going to need more attention than others. So, as I don't agree with it, that's what he does. God bless him. But I don't agree with it. I think that he's continuing the stereotype, and I don't like that. And it's like you're taking fatherhood as a joke. Now I understand from what I've heard in social media, he's ailing. He has some kind of disease, right?
It's lupus, yeah.
And he has said that he had a little bit of time left to live, supposedly, and he wanted to spread his seeds around to fertilize the world. And I'm like, that's not the way to be. It's my opinion, and I don't agree with it. And that's it in short.
Agreed.
I'm gonna have to agree with Mr. William. I appreciate Nick. He's talented. He's a genius. Comes down to that, yeah, I could not agree with that, because it's gonna, those kids are gonna need a dad. You're just not. He's just not going to be in the position to, give that concoction that we talked about earlier, the love, and even with all the money, it's they're still going to be yearning that love, and without right guidance, they can find that love elsewhere, and that's God forbid, that's how you see teen stars, hit drugs and go and, they do things that you would never expect them to do because they're, searching for love and they're searching for that missing piece. And, I couldn't agree with that. He's lost me on that.
Yeah, same here. I can't stand behind Nick on this one because even then, if we take his financial stature out of it, and he doesn't have the money to provide for these kids, it's like the other dads that we'll see that have many kids, but they're not able to be there for them. They're not able to take care of them. Like luckily for Nick, he's blessed that he has the finances and the means to be able to financially provide for his kids. But like William said earlier about like being able to just throw a football around with your kid. If you want to be there, like my girls had a recital about a month ago. Even if I have money to provide for the tutus and everything, the lessons for them to go, the biggest thing that they'll remember is that dad was standing there recording, that dad was there taking the pictures and everything. He was the loud one there, So you can have the money and do everything, provide for them, but it's the presence and the time and the bonding experience. If you're not there for that, money's not gonna help. Money's not really gonna raise your kid for you.
Right.
I want to piggyback off what Carl just said. So I'll share a story with you. Several years ago, my son was in a recital at school, a play. I got stuck at work, and I had to take the Long Island Railroad. The railroad was delayed, but thankfully, my wife was texting me step by step of his performance. So I've never missed any of his performances except for that one. And I remember it like yesterday. So I get to the school super late. The performance is over. He runs over and says, "Did you see me?" I said, "Of course." He said, "No, you didn't. You weren't sitting next to mommy." I said, "I was in the back of the audience, and I remember when you dropped your glasses and you picked it up and you kept going." He said, "Oh, okay." And going back to Nick Cannon, what if that one child, out of all these many children, right? What if that one child needed him to be there? That can scar a person, and you don't know what the ramifications would be, right? So if it happened, I was sharing that with my son, but thankfully I was able to fib and be like, "Hey, listen, I was here." But the truth is, kids need their parents, both of them, not just black men. They need both of their parents. And Nick Cannon is only providing a one parent solution, and that's unfortunately going to be the mother.
Right. Oh man, I just hope that the new generation of young men who are embarking on fatherhood are not looking at Nick Cannon and it's like, "Oh, this, this is cool. As long as I have some money, I can go ahead and populate the world." Because, like I said, the ramifications are great, and children remember. My son, one time I got late for a show, and he was looking everywhere for you, like he couldn't find. So they remember these things, and so. I mean, good luck to those kids, but I really do hope that, the young black men, especially those who are going to be tuning in, are not seeing him as the GOAT per se when it comes to this, and are really looking at you all who on this panel who are, everyday men who are taking care of their kids, who are, upstanding citizens. And, you guys are the true examples, I would say, the true examples of fatherhood. We all make mistakes, right? But at the end of the day, we all are here just trying to do the best that we can. And so with the last two questions I wanted to ask is really more so about, we talked about how, the strengthening of the Black family. And so I just want to kind of get, what are some ways, because the family construction is very different from how I, grew up, right? There's so many different things make up family. And we're not just talking about like orientation, but it could be, kids living with their aunts for whatever reason, or, aunt and uncle taking in children. So how do we strengthen the Black family in this day and age where it's becoming more and more difficult, I would say, to really do that? How do we maintain this sense of family for our children, so that, you know, this doesn't become like a dinosaur thing where it's like, remember that time where we had like a mom and a dad, or like our parents were together, and now it's like everybody is just like, again, single parenthood is just this norm where, you know, we're just, you know, kids are just existing without parents. So like, what ways can we strengthen the Black family in this day and age in particular?
I believe there's a few ways that we can strengthen. I believe for me, one, I noticed that the two gentlemen, they're married, and they were explaining how, you know, everything happened. You know, they were with their significant other, and married, and everything was, you know, everything was good and dandy. Now, me on the other hand, I wasn't really raised that way. I seen my dad, you know, growing up, but I knew that my parents weren't married, so I didn't know much about marriage. It's not until like, I want to say, a few years back, I've started noticing and started getting intrigued. And my friends also started getting married and everything, so marriage started, you know, coming into my life, and I'm like, wow, this. I see in the marriages that I see, they're very strong, strong marriages, and it's just a beautiful thing to see. So now I'm, you know, open and excited, and, you know, for marriage, but, you know, this is just happening late. So I would say to strengthen, you know, the household, educate each other on marriage and unity is something very important, and that's something that I wasn't really raised on. So I feel like just getting the word out there, letting our kids see by example. For instance, I'm not together with my daughter's mother, but we are very cordial. Everything is, you know, she's a good friend of mine. Co-parent, you know, beautifully, and I'm lucky for that. But I also do want my daughter to see that household, and that's why marriage is definitely in the near future for me, because I show her that. So I would say, you know, marriage, educating our kids, and, you know, on unity, being together and sticking it through, is very, very important for that. So that way, you know, we can be together.
Okay.
Okay. I would say let's change the narrative and what we see on TV, in our songs, and you know what? So since we're being very open and honest here with these conversations, you
Right.
know, a lot of our people, we watch TV, we are looking at the social media pages. Um, so if you change the narrative of what we see and what we think about Black fathers and how we treat our women, I'll say that again, how we treat our women,
Mhm.
then you would understand that the family structure is important. And also, I have a lot to say about this one. Also, having God in your family. I don't care what church you go to, but having the presence of God in your family. And truly, you know, truly like having the presence of God. And I'll say this. I remember an imam in Egypt told me, he said, I have friends that are Jewish, Christian, Baptist, the whole gambit. He said, and I love them still because they're all doing the same thing like the United States military does. You have the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and their goal is to protect the United States against these evil powers. The same thing like my other friends who are different denominations, what they do is we're all fighting against the devil. So because there's a lack of God in the home, and if there was more a presence of God in the home, I believe that the Black family structure would be better. I believe that changing the narrative is important about how we view men, um, and that you know we're not all lazy, or we're not just
Right.
having multiple children. We're educated. We know how to articulate. We have good vernacular. You know, our level of diction is good. We don't wear our pants off our butts. You know, we don't wear do rags in the street, or we don't let our daughters wear bonnets outside the house. You know, like, this is real talk,
It's
right?
true.
So
No, this is true.
change the
This is
entire.
true.
You have to change the entire image. You know,
Yeah.
and defend your family. Defend your family. Defend your family in every way possible. You know, but in order for you to defend your family, you have to be like a Carl. You have to be like a Patrick, well spoken and strong in your beliefs, that you can tell these people, hey, no, no, no. That's how my Haitian father was. And I know, Pat, you're Haitian as well, right?
100%.
You already know how our fathers were.
Absolutely.
But they were very hard, you know?
Yeah.
And, you know, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. So that's why you men are the way you are. But there is a lack of that. And I think the culprit is television, radio, songs, and the lack of God and the lack of church. And and that's a whole nother podcast, because
Right.
people also don't believe that the church structure is good anymore.
Mhm.
Because, you know, but I'll let Carl go ahead now.
Yeah, honestly, piggybacking off of what everybody said, definitely with controlling the narrative and education, especially early education, about respecting one another, and also the institution of marriage and of family. So family, the regular definition is of a two-parent household of what is it? A basic unit in society traditionally consisting of two parents rearing their children. That's the Webster Dictionary definition of it. But we know that family comes in many different aspects. It comes in different flavors, but at the end of the day, once if we have the early education of to respect family, to respect, to know that we're here, we're in this together, and it can help to shape that narrative so that it does get better. So um, and one thing that I'm also like going through this parenting experience and learning being a dad right now is really that it does take a village, not only to raise a child, but also to raise a family. So, it's like there are people that I pull from, I give my resources from, I'm like, yo, how do I be a better husband? How do I be a better dad? How do I be a better person individually? Because, being a better me makes me a better husband, makes me a better dad. So it's like just having all of that, get resources for all of that, just be able to have that put together, everything else just starts to click. And then you know what? Like you said, it's like being a better Christian, like having a better relationship with God, whichever God that you may identify with, like just that, like it just centers you and just gets you to like, all right. Because I know for me, like for us, like we said, being Christians, growing up Christian, I know the love that God has for me as his son, that now I impart that on my son. I impart that on my daughter. I'm like, you may stumble, you may do X, Y, and Z, things that I may not like in the moment, but guess what? The moment's gonna pass and I'm still gonna love you at the end of the day, no matter what it is. So, that helps to really just strengthen the unity of the family. So the early education, changing the narrative, um, keeping God centered in it, and just the community aspect as well. Like if we get back to taking a village to raise family and kids, I think that will definitely help to unify the Black family.
I love that answer, Carl. And it kind of segued into the last question with respect to how can the community support Black fathers, right? Because I think that the community is at fault to an extent as to how, Black fathers, Black men are viewed. Because of the continual perpetuation of the narrative, and I think sometimes instead of when you talk about the love of Christ, stumbling, getting back up, still having compassion for one another, sometimes the community, they'll see whether it's the young Black father or even the older Black father, but they see the Black father stumbled, or they might do something that might not necessarily be proper. And instead of being in community with them and saying, you know what, young brother, let me help you out, or let me show you how this is done, there's instead, that's why Black men are like this. That's why that's why, you can't even parent your child. That's why you suck as a father. And so there's so much negativity. that is spewed instead of showing love. So for those who are tuning in now and who are going to be tuning in afterwards, we want to also hold the community accountable too, with respect to this changing of the narrative when it comes to Black fatherhood. So how can the community, I guess, effectively really support Black fathers?
I think it starts with, you got to keep the same energy with how we, unfortunately, how we've been saying for, the Black dads are not present. There's this, there's that. Keep the same energy when you do see that good dad that's there. The same way, as loud as you were saying, Black dads are not present. When you see a present Black dad, be that loud. The same way, be as loud as it is. Like, shout it from the mountaintops. Let it be known, like, there are Black dads in Brooklyn. Let it be known wherever they are. Like, just let, because that's all it is. Like, word of mouth really spreads like wildfire, and then it picks up because now, if in our community we're saying it, the kids are listening, so they're hearing and they're being shaped, their minds are being formed, and now it's not just, okay, well, I saw in this rap video, I heard in this rap song, I saw in this movie, I saw in this show, there was no dad, it was just mom doing it, but that's not what I'm seeing when I go outside. I'm hearing that my neighbor has his dad. I'm hearing that the guy across the street has their dad. And if we're just loud with it and just letting it be known, the same way how, unfortunately, in the past, we were loud with it and let it be known that dads weren't present, if we're just changing the narrative and just being as loud with it, I think that definitely helps going and help to provide support as well.
Also, being accountable. I would have to add definitely being accountable. That's big, and not only being accountable, but Mr. Williams said the way you treat, your woman, that is being watched. So the way you treat your significant other, and the way you see your peers treat their significant other. If you see something like MTA, say, you have to, you really have to step up and, you know, be the village. Paul said, be the village.
That's such a hard question because there's so many different components that the community needs to do to make us to support the Black family. But Carl and Pat pretty much hit it on the head. But this it's a kind of a loaded question because if you go too loud, like Carl said, then it might be perceived as not being genuine. Because and I'm gonna like, so do Caucasian families, fathers have to be loud with it? No. Do Asian fathers have to be loud with it? No. But and it's a loaded question because they have the gift of time. A lot of us in our community are really educated and because of the pandemic, we had the advantage of working from home. A lot of us. But and it's going to tie in together, so just bear with me. I remember being home talking to my wife about this and my brother, and I said, isn't it amazing our white counterparts and Asian counterparts have this life for decades. For decades. And what did that do? The kids were eating dinner at a good time by 6, 7 o'clock, like how we had it when we were kids. Homework was done. Communication happened at the dinner table, or even just in the household, maybe not the dinner table per se. So how can the community support Black families? We need access to better jobs. We need access to flexibility and time. We need society to look at us like we're valued and we're something. I love arguing with people. I'm a debater, and I remember I remember today. I took my son somewhere, He went to the golf course, going for his fourth interview. 4 interviews. He's 17 years old. And he's going to get it because he got some good feedback today. But one of the things that I did not like, this man said to my son, persistence is not always a good thing. I told my wife, I said, how can he say that? But if it was someone else, it would be like, good job, young man. You're persistent. You're going to go far in life. So what they're looking at, right, guys, in my opinion, and how do you change, and how does this relate to Black families? They're looking at you not being good enough to be persistent and to be in the titles that you have. So as Black fathers, if we become louder, it can be perceived in a negative way too. I think that that's the answer though, Carl, because we have to do that to start changing the narrative. But after a while, you have to learn when to pull back and just be who we are. Right. And like I'll close with this topic. I used to tell my son, to this day still, you're a king. We've come from kings. Then I'll tell him about our Haitian roots, right? Then I'll tell him about our African roots. And I said, your mom is a queen. Even if I wasn't with my wife, your mom is a queen and you're a prince and I'm a king. And we're descendants of kings and queens. And when you start saying that enough, right, it becomes ingrained. And when you look in the mirror, you would say, oh, I'm that king, I'm that queen.
Right. I totally see what you're talking about, William, with respect to knowing when to dial back a little bit. And it's really unfortunate that we have to be like, hey guys, look at me, I'm a Black dad, I'm here, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. Whereas the other cultures, the other groups, they don't have to do that. And I think when it comes to the community aspect, that's where the community really believing in us, like you said, seeing that we are people, we are valuable. I think that's where that comes in. Because if the community starts seeing that we are people, we are valuable, Black fathers are valuable, they're necessary, they're present, we don't need to convince them that you guys are doing what you need to do. Just like how the white community, you don't have to convince them. You don't even have to convince, they don't have to convince a Black person that they're a good dad. So it's disheartening, but I think that we are on the right track, because I'm looking at some of the comments there in the comment section from Tammy. She's saying, how about start the commercials, the visuals of Black families, and I think that that's how you do it. You start exactly normal. It should be normal. We start to normalize what Black families look like. Unfortunately, back in the day where we had the Cosbys, we had all of these shows. We don't really have. We have Love and Hip Hop now. We have, Real Housewives of Atlanta, where nobody's a housewife except for one person. And this is what we're seeing as relationship, and this is what kids are seeing. And so I think that if we all on this panel and those who are watching can, share a post, if you see some positive, posts about the Black family, Black fathers, we should definitely, I love that series Black Love, because I love how it highlights Black love. Because again, growing up in a single parent household, although I had family, aunts, uncles who were married, I also had a viewpoint on marriage, like, oh, I don't really know what this is. But now that I'm watching this Black love, I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is so beautiful. And I think if we create more content and we have more of these conversations, I think that we'll start to get to a place where we'll normalize, that Black fatherhood is not, is here, and that Black families are also here.
I love what you said, and what I'm hearing is, and we've all said this tonight, eliminate the ratchetness.
Right. Yes.
It's the imagery, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I hate to sound old. Oh my God, but it's so bad. It's like, you're like, who speaks that way?
Right.
Who? Who does that?
Right.
Yeah, I guess it sells.
That's the problem. It sells, and somehow, even us very professional individuals, we're just like, oh, this is brainless TV. We need the entertainment, and so we justify it by like, oh, we just need the entertainment. But you know what? Back in the day, we were entertained off of quality television.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
but it even goes. You remember that show Flavor of Love, the Flavor Flav?
Yes. Oh gosh.
I remember taking the train to Midtown, and I'm watching this advertisement in the tunnel. The title was "Watch N," the letter N, discuss. But the way they spelled it was disgust, like disgusting. Watch and discuss, because they painted a picture that Flavor Flav was ignorant and disgusting looking. Why? I'm like, I can't believe, and they had his picture there. And I was like, wow, this is what it is. This is what it's come to.
Yeah.
This is what it's come to. And then even watching, you mentioned Housewives, right? And I'm like, they're fighting on TV and Love and Hip Hop with all these people. I'm like, we're not that people. We're really not.
Right. The majority of us are not loving hip hop, but to the world, they're seeing Black people depicted, and they're like, oh, this is Black people.
Yeah.
So it definitely starts, I think, with us. And you had talked about the music earlier, Will. Some of us are deep rooted into that, the music that's, talking bad about our women, talking bad about our men. We're linked in. And so I think it's that a renovation, I guess, of our minds, maybe, to help us get to where we need to get for the sake of the children, right? Because we have to prepare our minds for our future generation, like to really care for the future generation. So,
but there was a fine line though. We had that music when we were growing up, and it was
innocent.
We were innocent.
For the most part, it came on after 10 o'clock.
Right?
Yeah, I didn't know BET After Dark until I was an adult.
But you all said it. We all said it. There was show like The Rock, Family Matters, and I purposely said those shows first. Of course, we know of the Cosby Show. We know of A Different World, but there were shows that showed us how Black fathers really were and Black families really were.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just the Cosby Show, but what happened? You do not find that on TV anymore.
Right.
Everything has to have an influence of what's going on in social media today. And I know we have guests here from all around the world, so I don't want to insult anyone, but not everybody. Why can't we just have a regular show like Bill Maher said? Why can't we just have a regular show about father, mother, children? Why can't we? It doesn't sell. It doesn't sell.
Yeah, and that's what it is, and that's unfortunately the society we're in. With if it doesn't sell, it's not it's not part of the lineup, right? Like UPN is not even a channel anymore.
I believe that it will sell. They just don't know. They just don't know that. They don't believe that it's going to sell.
Right.
But I believe, and that Carl said it best. If we push that narrative, it's going to change the mindset of people.
Yeah.
Period.
Definitely.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, guys, thank you so much for taking the time to be part of this conversation. I know that we can go on and on and on, but time flies when you're having fun and when you're having real positive discussions. And so I definitely want to bring all of you back to have either some sort of a part 2, or maybe, because I know, Will, you're like, oh, that's for another podcast. That's for another podcast. And we might have to come back to talk about these other, these other topics that are just as relevant as this general conversation we're having today.
Anytime. This is fun. Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. And so, guys, I don't know if you want to put your, if you're interested in having people connect with you, because usually sometimes people are like, oh, we want to follow Carl, follow if you want to, you can put it in the chat. But I want to thank everybody who tuned in tonight. Again, it's really difficult sometimes, especially in the summertime, to get people to tune in live. I know most of our viewers are after the fact viewers. And so I just want to thank you all for tuning in tonight. And thank you to those who are going to watch this, when you're ready. This is just one of the many conversations that we have here on Black Ivy Media. We are very dedicated to the Black community and having these types of conversations that are not always had, and I think it's very important that we engage in these types of conversations because we have generations that are coming up behind us that unfortunately, they need rearing, they need guidance. And then even for ourselves, it's good to hear, other perspectives and see how other people are doing things. And so we have these conversations, I would say, every other month. So for those of you who are wondering, how can, I find out when the next one's happening? Well, we're on all social media platforms at Black Ivy Media. We also have our website, www.blackivymedia.com, if you want to check us out there. I just wanted to do a quick shout out to our sponsors, those who have, really helped Black Ivy Media get to where it's at. So shout out to Air Wellness, Trendy Tripping, Halefo, ARA Emotional Wellness, Mental Health and Hygiene. And to all of you again who've been day one followers, thank you again for just continuing your support of us. And with that being said, everyone, have a great evening. Have a great weekend. And William?
Yeah, you said that if to follow us, my wife and I are both authors, and you can follow us on Nobody's Child, a biography on Instagram. It's topics like what we're discussing, the Black household, and the book that's out now is Nobody's Child, a biography.
A biography. I'm going to put that in the chat because we love to support our authors here.
Absolutely.
Nobody's Child, a biography.
Nobody's underscore child underscore biography.
Okay, so I'm going to have to get that one more time. Nobody's underscore?
Yep, the word child.
Okay.
Underscore biography.
Biography. All right, guys.
No, bio, not biography. Bio.
Okay, great. Nobody's underscore child underscore bio.
Correct.
All right, great. So, guys, I put it in the chat. We love supporting our authors here. We love supporting our authors. So, guys, please follow them on Instagram. Get the book. I will definitely get the book. Okay. And maybe we'll have you back to talk about the book because I love our authors. We love our authors. But guys, again, thank you for taking the time and being here, and spending an hour and a half with me to talk about Black fatherhood. So I look forward to engaging with you guys offline. And with that being said, everyone, have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
All right, William, we got to connect. You can follow us on IG.